If you, like us, have been absolutely consumed by the sound coming out of the 11/6 music, especially anything with DLB or the incredible Leonary, you start to realize something pretty quickly. The faces, the voices, they change, but the underlying architecture, it just stays stable.
Yeah.
It's the sonic signature. It's subtle. It's deeply layered, textural. It's like a hum under the beat that just screams structural integrity, and then you hear it.
Touched by Joyeons Seoul Felt.
That is the definitive producer tag. And for those who are in the know, it's not just branding, is it? It's a statement of intent.
Oh, absolutely.
It's this 3-second sonic signal that grabs your attention because it's basically a whisper in an industry that is so maximalist, so loud, and just constantly screaming for your attention. That tag belongs to Joyeons Yoon, and that is who our entire deep dive is dedicated to today.
And it's the perfect microcosm of her genius, isn't it?
It really is.
You listen to that tag, and you instantly get her core philosophy. It's control. It's subtle. It's almost textural, sitting deep inside the soundscape.
Yeah.
It's designed to confirm her presence inside the mix, not to, announce herself with this big, ego-driven branding. This is the artist who is the ultimate all-rounder. She raps, she sings, she composes, engineers, and yet she chooses to communicate her authority with this quiet restraint.
And that paradox is exactly what makes her work so essential to study. I mean, she has this massive, undeniable impact, especially in her non-performing roles, as a key creative within 11SAX.
A structural creative.
Exactly, a structural creative. Yet she keeps this highly, almost surgically private presence in the public eye. So for you listening, our mission today is pretty ambitious. We're going to observe how she works. We're dissecting why her discipline, her commitment to structure, to design, and so crucially to subtraction is her single greatest creative weapon. She's not just an artist, she's a builder, an architect of sound.
And we need to understand the blueprint.
We do.
To really get that unique flavor of her discipline, we have to establish the foundation first.
Yeah.
Because she didn't just emerge from some standard, glossy K-pop development pipeline. The source material lays out this intensely self-forged background. She was raised, formative years and all, basically commuting between Seoul and Las Vegas.
Right, so you have this profound juxtaposition.
Exactly. The meticulousness and, the exactitude of Korean discipline, constantly clashing with the raw risk tolerance and the improvisation of the American experience.
Yeah.
That duality, that tension is structurally baked into her whole creative process.
That's such a fascinating synthesis. It suggests her control isn't rigid, it's adaptive. But the foundation, it gets even tougher, doesn't it?
It does.
Before 11SAX Music was even founded, and certainly before it became the powerhouse it is now, she entered this separate, now defunct creative operation. And the notes, they pointedly describe this place not as a school or a studio, but as a pressure cooker.
And that distinction is so crucial.
Why?
Because it wasn't a phase of gentle development, it was a trial by fire. Output was the only measure of survival. She was, as the sources say, learning how to write complicated, structurally sound music under these relentless, brutal deadlines. And more importantly, she learned to produce and engineer without credit. That's a common thing in those development houses, which means her motivation was purely technical excellence. It wasn't about public recognition.
So she was the uncredited repair specialist,
basically.
Constantly forced to fix songs that were already broken, salvage tracks that had no melodic future, and do it all incredibly quickly. That sounds like a technical education rooted in, crisis management.
It absolutely was. She wasn't nurtured. She was relied upon because she delivered a necessary functional product. So by the time 11SAX formed and she arrived on the scene, she wasn't described as discovered or developed.
No, the term was fully sharpened.
Fully sharpened and already dangerous. This early self-forged experience where chaos was just the norm is the direct root of her present-day structural thinking, her unrelenting work ethic. When Joyeons shows restraint today, it's not because she lacks the skill for maximalism.
Not at all.
It's because she learned in this profoundly chaotic environment just how absolutely crucial control and architecture are for creative survival, for longevity. She learned to filter out the noise out of pure necessity.
Okay, let's unpack this builder mentality then, her operational identity. We established this dual identity. Yoon-Ah, the person, and Joyeons, the producer alias. This division feels so profoundly intentional.
Oh, it is.
It allows her to separate the architect from, the potential demands of being a performer.
It's more than just intentional. It's the operational framework of her entire professional life. Yoon-Ah is the human, Joyeons is the function.
The function, I like that.
It's the specific creative authority and skill set she deploys in the studio. And that function is explicitly about authorship, which directly informs why she maintains such a firm boundary in her public presentation.
Right.
The source material is unequivocal about this. She rejects the term idol outright. To her, that term, in its common use, implies decoration, performance, manufactured perfection over the fundamental act of authorship and control. She is there to control the outcome, to function as a builder of sonic structures, not simply to be admired for visual perfection.
And yet her visual aesthetic is itself this fascinating contradiction that perfectly mirrors her sonic blend. It's an intentional visual tension.
It is.
You see that high-polished Korean elegance, the meticulous styling, the pristine makeup, the refined silhouettes, but it's always deliberately colliding with the street defiance. She'll pair a high-fashion, finely tailored jacket with light wash ripped denim and these chunky, oversized sneakers, or she'll have sophisticated braids with these deliberately raw, oversized layers.
That visual tension is the perfect analogy for her entire catalog.
Right.
She operates precisely at that intersection of fluid R&B pop crossover sensibility, which gives you that soft, emotional core. But she blends it directly into the darker, often more structurally rigid hip-hop tone that 11SX favors.
So the visual is a declaration.
It's a constant declaration. I understand the requirements of elegance, of polish, and presentation, but my foundation is defiant. It's rooted in the street, and it's on my own terms. She's building within the system, but she dictates the terms of engagement.
So if we look at her specific function inside the incredibly dense 11SIX ecosystem, her role is defined not by celebrity, but by precision.
Precision engineering.
Melodic engineering, that's the term the source material uses. Let's clarify that for the listener. What does that actually entail in practice?
Melodic engineering is the most precise job description she could have. 11SIX is known for these heavy, intense beats, right? Often from producers like Hustle Harmonics, or you get the visceral, raw lyrical power of DLB.
Right.
But that raw energy needs an anchor. It needs a roadmap, and it needs a way to reach a pop audience. That is her job. Her specific functions include developing lyrical top lines, melodic progression, harmony stacks, and intense vocal engineering.
Okay, for those less familiar with the production jargon, can you unpack those terms a bit? What are we talking about when you say top lines?
Absolutely. So think of the top line as the main melodic element, the tune you actually whistle or sing.
The hook.
It's the lead melody and the vocal hooks that sit above the main instrumental bed. In pop and R&B, the quality of that top line determines the song's immediate appeal, its stickiness. Her strength is creating these complex, memorable top lines that feel effortless, but are actually technically very difficult.
And the harmony stacks.
When we talk about harmony stacks, we're referring to the dense layers of background vocals she arranges, sometimes dozens of tracks, that provide texture, emotional depth, and this rich, enveloping sound that is now a hallmark of 11SIX's female-led tracks. She provides the R&B pop fluency, that essential emotional softness that prevents the entire ecosystem from just collapsing into pure grit and volume.
And she's deeply embedded in the group structures, too. She's a founding member and a structural backbone of K1A, their flagship girl group, serving simultaneously as main rapper, sub-vocalist, and producer. I mean, she's wearing 3 hats inside her own group.
She's essential. She's responsible for so much of K1A's melodic grounding and the lyrical precision in their rap sections. But beyond that, she's a confirmed collective contributor to Crown of Lambs. Now, for the listener who needs context, Crown of Lambs isn't a traditional girl group. It's 11SIX's specialized female layered vocal engine. It's a collective that provides the incredibly complex background textures for all the label's major releases.
So when we hear those incredibly rich, almost architectural background vocals on a DLB track or even a Leonary song,
Joyeons is likely in that stack.
wow.
Precisely. She's often providing those soaring harmonies, the intricate bridges, the crucial hook layers, and that specific element of emotional softness. Her ability to operate within Crown of Land means she is, in a way, a ghostwriter of texture across the entire 11SIX catalog.
The fascinating takeaway here is her fluidity, right? She shifts seamlessly and silently from main rapper to sub-vocalist to composer to producer to simply observer. The sources say she doesn't announce the shift. She adapts based on what the song demands, but how does she manage that? How does her own distinctive voice not get lost in the mix?
That's where the discipline becomes a form of ego suppression. She understands that visibility and impact are not the same thing. In fact, sometimes visibility can actually detract from impact.
Interesting.
Her commitment to the melodic engineering role means she is singularly focused on structural integrity. She's making sure the foundation is strong enough to support the full weight of the concept, the emotions, the artist's performance, the ability to pull back when the song doesn't need her up front, to step into that observer role that defines her maturity and, ironically, her authority in the room. She adapts because her loyalty is to the final product, not her individual performance credit.
The control we see in her structural role really sets the stage for her defining philosophy, which is, I think, surprisingly, all about what she removes from the mix.
It's exactly.
Let's dive into section 2, the art of restraint, or the subtraction philosophy. This stands in such stark, almost revolutionary contrast to the typical industry impulse, which is always to layer, add, maximize every single second of sound.
And if you look at her workflow as it's described in session notes and interviews, it paints a very consistent picture. Her first action in any session, no matter the project, is not to pitch an idea or throw up a beat.
It's to listen.
It is to simply listen. She focuses entirely on the song's space, where it feels cluttered, where it feels tight, and most importantly, where it feels open. The initial instinct is always defensive. If something doesn't feel right, the solution is usually to move it, or even simpler, just mute it.
So subtraction isn't a last resort for her. It's an instinctual rule. If a section feels crowded or heavy, she doesn't try to mix her way out of it. She removes elements. She mutes tracks before she ever even considers adding a new layer.
And here is the critical link, the metric she uses for why something is permanently gone. If the core emotion of the track stays, or even better, if it strengthens after you mute an element, that element didn't need to be there in the first place. Think about that as a creative rule. She is treating emotion as this almost immovable, measurable quantity. If that synth line, that extra drum fill, that vocal ad-lib, if it's not actively increasing or structurally supporting the core emotional truth of the song, it's not just unnecessary, it's detrimental, it is clutter, and it is surgically removed.
Okay, but I have to challenge this a little bit. If you are so aggressively filtering out all this potential chaos or complexity, isn't there a risk that you lose the raw human quality of the performance? That you make the song feel too sterile, too designed?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
But the sources indicate she fights against sterility through the intentional use of negative space, not by removing necessary elements. And this leads us directly to the concept of the weaponization of silence.
The weaponization of silence.
As she notes, silence tells me more than most takes. In her methodology, silence is not merely an absence of sound. It is treated as a foundational element of the arrangement itself.
How does that actually manifest musically?
It manifests as pressure. A song is only strong if it can breathe for a second. If you can introduce a gap, a momentary silence, and the listener still feels the tension and the rightness of the structure. She's creating extreme pressure dynamics.
Okay.
She ensures that when the sound does hit, when that kick drum lands or the vocal returns, it carries maximal impact because the space right before it has cleared the air. This focus on negative space is incredibly sophisticated. It's a technique you'd normally associate with seasoned composers or certain schools of jazz and film scoring, and she's applying it directly to R&B and hip-hop.
So it ensures every drum hit lands without clutter.
And every word rings true because there's no unnecessary competition in the frequency spectrum.
That makes perfect sense. You need the air to make the drums punch. You need the gap to make the melody land. If you fill every single millisecond, you eliminate your pressure points and you just exhaust the listener.
Exactly. And this philosophy extends to her internal process discipline. When she was asked about the hardest part of the work, the struggle every creator faces, she cited stopping, letting something be finished without reopening it just because I can.
Wow.
She is acutely aware of the danger of overworking a track, of chasing those momentary flashes of genius that often ruin the coherence. Her focus is always on consistency over those short-term bursts. She believes the true powerful moments come from consistency. They're not things you chase frantically around in the room.
That is the sound of a truly mature, long-term creative vision. She's actively fighting that digital impulse, toward infinite revisions that technology allows us. And this search for consistency and truth leads her to seek out, and I'm quoting here, textures that feel human, imperfect moments, things that don't sound overly cleaned up.
This is her conscious rejection of the often sterile, over-polished, and auto-tuned aesthetic that dominates so much of contemporary pop. For instance, if a vocalist performs a raw, emotionally vulnerable take that includes, say, a slight vocal crack or a deep breath,
Yeah.
many producers today would scrub that clean, assuming it's a flaw. Joyeons, according to the sources, actively tries to preserve these human textures. Those imperfections are parts of authenticity, and they are structurally valuable. They prevent the design from becoming too perfect and therefore too cold.
Which brings us full circle right back to the quiet producer tag.
It does.
It just reinforces why her tag is so subtle. She doesn't want it to interrupt the structural flow of the record or disrupt that human texture. It signals her intentional presence. I was here, I shaped this architecture, but it doesn't assert dominance over the artistic content.
She is visible, she says, only where it truly counts. In the mix. Her fingerprint is left in the structural integrity, the feeling, the emotional pacing, not in some flashy, maximalist performance. It's a powerful lesson. If your contribution is strong enough, it doesn't need to be shouted.
Okay, so if we want to move beyond the philosophy and see this discipline applied in concrete, high-stakes scenarios, we have to look at the confirmed production authority she holds over DLB's flagship 2025 releases.
Yes.
This is not just occasional collaboration. She is structurally vital to the sound of one of the label's central artists during his most autobiographical period.
This is where her importance to the whole ecosystem becomes just undeniable. She has album producer credits on Lost Youth, which came out mid-2025, and Mercy is for the Week, released later that same month. These are emotionally central projects for DLB.
Huge projects.
And she's credited as the guiding creative hand on several of the most important tracks.
Let's actually list these out and analyze the range. On Lost Youth, she is credited as the sole producer on the powerful title track Lost Youth, and on the introspective track Slow Kill. She also co-produced Hustler's Prayer 2 alongside Hustle Harmonics, which suggests she's fluent in balancing that heavy trap-influenced production with her melodic precision.
Absolutely. And on Mercy is for the Week, her footprint is equally broad. She produced One Late Night, the atmosphere-heavy Vegas in July, and the incredibly poignant Happy Birthday, Mercy. She also holds a co-producer credit on the album's emotional entry point, Before the Shot, intro.
So this confirms her ability to transition fluidly across all these emotional registers, from, narrative storytelling in One Late Night to creating the ambient cinematic mood you need for a track like Vegas in July. She is, quite simply, the melodic and emotional anchor across DLB's most critically sensitive works.
She has to be.
Why do you think DLB, a powerhouse known for such a raw, intense delivery, leans so heavily on her structural sensibility for these intimate projects?
Because DLB's raw performance is chaos by design. To make that chaos stick, you need an undeniable structure beneath it. You need her melodic grounding and her surgical approach to emotional delivery. If you are going to lay your deepest, most painful truths bare on a record, you need an architect who can convert that energy into a repeatable, consumable structure without sanitizing the pain.
And Joyeons is that architect.
She's that architect. She provides the precision necessary for his intensity to hit its mark.
Which brings us to the ultimate piece of evidence, her explicit feature on DLB's track Ain't On Camera, where she drops her verse, and in doing so, basically articulates her entire studio philosophy. This track functions as a documented truth about the 11SIX creative environment.
It's an incredible piece of creative witnessing. DLB's verses set this deeply unsettling raw scene. Ain't no credits when you crying in the beat. He talks about the studio smelling like sweat, wine, and fear. He specifically recalls Leoneri, or Tala Duwata as she was known then, crying before she laid down her vocals for a track, emphasizing that shit hurt.
Oh.
He describes a physical fight breaking out in the hallway while they were recording.
This context is so vital because it proves she wasn't just sent a file to add a verse to later. She was physically present, witnessing and absorbing the emotional and sometimes physical chaos of the creation process. DLB's delivery emphasizes that the production team, Joyeons included, kept working, keeping his hand on the fader while the walls clapped out during the fight.
And that shared presence, that witnessing of trauma, is what gives her thesis statement its power. When Joyeons delivers her core lines in the track, she completely reframes the entire production ethos of the label.
They think it's magic, I call it design.
I built her pain into 4-bar time. This is the producer mentality codified. She reframes trauma not as spectacle, not as some mystical muse, but as structural material. Her job, she states, is to convert emotional chaos into controlled, repeatable architectural precision.
That line is just chillingly precise because it uses technical language to describe emotional placement. Panned left trauma with midnight truth. What exactly does she mean by that for the lay listener?
She's not just writing a clever lyric. She's literally describing her mix notes and her engineering decisions. First, 4-bar time is the standard rhythmic block. the foundational measure in which music is composed.
Okay.
She is saying, I take this raw, painful emotion, and I fit it exactly into this specific, measured musical container. She gives it structure and control. Secondly, pan-left trauma refers to panning, physically positioning that emotional sound, that specific moment of pain or vulnerability, into the left side of the listener's stereo field, into your left headphone.
And why is that technical decision so significant?
Because placing a sound to one side, especially something as intimate as a moment of pain, creates this sense of immediacy and almost inescapable intimacy for you as the listener. It feels closer, more direct, less grandly produced. She is using the technical tools of mixing to surgically place emotional wounds into the listener's experience. Her work, she states, is proof.
Every mic I touch, tell the shit they mute.
Exactly. She is documenting the raw truth that the wider industry or even the artists themselves in moments of regret might want to clean up or mute. She proudly states that they ain't fixed one bit, confirming the structural integrity of the raw, human, even broken moments in the final mix.
And that structural loyalty, it seems to be infectious, especially in her collaborative relationships, particularly with Leonore, who was the subject of that crying in the beat line. The sources mention their sessions are very direct.
That directness is the currency of trust forged in those intense, documented moments. Joyeon's discipline is the standard bearer when she's working in the high-stakes, fast-paced group settings of K1A or Crown XI. That shared trust and clarity speeds everything up. There's no time wasted on ego or politics. Everyone understands the restraint philosophy. They know precisely when to step forward with their performance, and more importantly, when to pull back and serve the larger architecture of the song. Her focused discipline just transforms the creative environment into this efficient, ego-free factory where the needs of the song always take precedence over the desires of the individual performer.
Moving into her personal profile, it becomes so evident that the discipline we hear structurally in the music is a direct extension of Yoon-Ah, the person. The profile describes her as sharp, intensely private, and relentlessly focused. She moves between sarcasm and charm with calculated ease, and that switch, the source notes emphasize, is never accidental.
That phrase, calculated ease, is the perfect encapsulation of her brand of absolute control. You see the extreme management of her professional output mirrored directly in her personal boundary setting. Her privacy isn't adopted for mystery, which is a common marketing tool.
No, it's not a gimmick.
It is disciplined boundary setting. She refuses to engage in unnecessary public drama or overshare, ensuring her focus remains entirely on the work, the structure, the engineering, the composition.
She treats her time and attention as finite, valuable resources that are only to be deployed on essential creative tasks.
Precisely. And within the 11SXX circle, the terms of engagement are absolute. Loyalty is absolute once it's earned, and disrespect is answered immediately and without ceremony. This is not the passive, compliant persona sometimes associated with artists who are expected to be decorative. This is the mindset of a creative executive who demands respect for her process and for her time.
And we keep tracing this back to the fundamental synthesis of her contradictory upbringing, right? Soul discipline meets Las Vegas risk. How does that geographical and cultural mix actually fuel her present-day creative output?
It creates the perfect skill set for her unique role as a structuralist who still has to perform. The Korean discipline provides the exactitude in lyrical writing, the meticulous arrangement of harmony sacs, and the structural thinking necessary to approach records as complex systems. This allows her to subtract with absolute confidence because she knows precisely what is essential to the core structure.
And the Vegas risk.
The American risk tolerance is evident in her performance choices and her delivery. Her rap flows, when she chooses to deploy them, are described as unforgiving, aggressive, commanding, demanding attention. The risk tolerance allows her to step up front and completely dominate when the beat calls for it. She knows when to calculate the risk, which allows her to deploy maximum firepower without sacrificing the overall structural integrity of the track.
It's the best of both worlds.
Perfect structural planning combined with high-impact, uncompromising delivery.
So if she is so focused on structure and control, what does this entire philosophy mean for her long-term creative authority in a rapidly changing industry? Because she is explicitly not chasing visibility or quick trends.
It defines the long game. She doesn't chase trends, she reverse engineers them. She observes them, breaks them down into their component parts, analyzes the architecture that makes them popular, and then uses those insights as material without ever submitting to the trend itself. This ensures her output is remarkably coherent across different projects, different collaborators, even different genres.
And that coherence, that recognizable texture, that must be what builds such profound trust with collaborators and listeners alike.
It is the ultimate creative currency. Whether she's providing melodic engineering for DLB, delivering a challenging rap verse on a Chronic Eye track, or structurally building a K1A album, her sound textures, her emotional pacing, and her structural cleanliness are recognizable. When you hear that tag, you are guaranteed structural integrity, restraint, and intentional emotional architecture. That consistent delivery is the definition of long-term creative authority. She doesn't need external hype cycles because she is building an enduring archive of meticulously crafted work.
Her impact, then, is a masterclass in how restraint functions as power.
Yes.
She proves that control and discipline, not volume or over-explanation, define true influence in music. That brings us to the final thought we wanted to leave you with, reflecting deeply on the emotional consequence of this surgical discipline process. We've established that Joyeon's production methodology relies so heavily on subtraction. She surgically removes all the emotional clutter, all the elements that don't absolutely serve the core feeling.
She is the creative who engineers pain into precise four-bar time. She eliminates every single piece of noise that might distract the listener from the essential truth of the song.
So the provocative thought is this. If the creator has systematically and surgically removed everything extraneous, does the emotional weight that remains in the final track hit the listener harder? Is the feeling more intense because it's so clean, so purely designed?
I believe it does. I really do. If the production is explicitly designed to filter out every distraction and only leave the essential emotional truth, then her silence, her choice to pull back and simply observe, to remove the clutter, ultimately makes her presence louder. She uses the architecture of the record to guide and focus your emotional response. When she builds pain into four-bar time, she's not containing the feeling, she is amplifying it by giving it a perfect, clean, and undeniable stage.
It's not just music. It's controlled architecture designed for maximum emotional impact. And that is the enduring legacy of Joyeons, Yoon-Ah, the melodic engineer who builds records to last. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the discipline of design.